They should give a warning. Goodbye, land. I'm getting it on videotape. Yes, sir. Please don't face the sun. Are they gonna back up some more? Wait, is this the front? No, it ain't. Oh, you're right. It might be the front. Steel City, boy.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome aboard the Gateway Clipper Fleet's Princess for our 1-hour sightseeing cruise. I like to call this the Sunset Cruise. When we turn around on the Ohio River, coming back upstream, you should be able to get a beautiful view of the setting sun.
I cannot wait.
Behind the boat, so get ready for that. Right now, I'd like to turn the microphone over. Oh, by the way, I am your captain for this cruise. My name is Captain Joe.
Captain
Tonight
Joe.
we'll sail around the 3 rivers while you enjoy the sights of the city. Right now, though, I'd like to turn the microphone over to our narrator this evening, Josh. He's going to tell you all about our beautiful city of Pittsburgh. Josh?
Thank you very much, Captain. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gateway Clipper. As the Captain said, we will be sailing all 3 of the city rivers today, seeing hundreds of sights, hearing hundreds of facts, and hundreds of the cheesiest jokes they will legally allow me to tell into a microphone. We're going to get started off our right-hand side with Station Square. As the Captain said, we are pulling out of our historic Station Square dock. Station Square itself is coming up on our right-hand side. Now, as the name would suggest, Station Square has its roots in railway life, being one of the largest central hubs of railway here in Pittsburgh. At least it used to be. Nowadays, it is a nightlife hub with things like the Andy Dancer Saloon, Home Run Harry's, and the Melting Pot. Looking behind Station Square itself, you'll see a railway of a different sort going up and down the side of the hill. This is one of Pittsburgh's famous inclines, which are technically considered railway modes of transportation.
Look at that.
Originally, we would have had over 22 inclines here in the city, 19 of which would have been on this side of Mount Washington. This one is known as the Monongahela Incline, named after the river we are currently sailing on. It is the older of the 2 remaining inclines. It's so old, in fact, that it is one of the oldest continually running inclines in the United States. Continuing along the right-hand side, you'll see a large building with P and L-E-R-R on top. That stands for Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. This originally would have been the railway station for the Station Square property. Nowadays, you can't catch a train there, but you can catch a bite to eat in the Grand Concourse, one of the best brunch spots here in the city. They have absolutely amazing mimosas, including a beautiful stained glass ceiling where the lights twinkle and shine. Now, Pittsburgh is known for many things. We're the Steel City, we're the city of 3 rivers, but we're also the city of bridges. We have over 446 bridges total here in our city. That makes us the city with the most bridges in the entire world. We actually beat out Venice, Italy by several bridges. What? The first bridge that we're coming under is known as the Smithfield Street Bridge. It also, coincidentally, is the oldest bridge we'll see on today's tour. Now, the Smithfield Street Bridge is the 3rd bridge of the same name to have sat on this property. The first 2 having burned down in subsequent Great Fires of Pittsburgh. The first Great Fire of Pittsburgh was started when a woman was doing her laundry and accidentally knocked over an oil lantern into a bucket of oiled rags. It went on to burn down approximately half of the city, which was ultimately built back
That's something
even
Jake
better
would
than
do
before. As
That's
I said,
something
the
Jake would
Smithfield
do.
Street Bridge would have had two predecessors.
Right?
Originally, these would have been covered bridges, and if you looked off to your right-hand side, you'd see a large apartment building-like structure. This is where the toll collector would have lived for the Smithfield Street Bridge. Nowadays, the Smithfield Street Bridge is free to travel both by vehicle and pedestrian traffic as well. Now, as we are on a boat today, it's important that we know the different parts of the boat. We're going to start off with the front, which we call the bow. You can remember that because you always bow forward out of respect. The back of the boat where I'm hanging at is known as the stern. You can remember this because you always leave stern people way behind you. Now, the right-hand side of the boat, we do tell left from right, judging by the front of the boat, is known as the starboard. You can remember that because there's two R's in starboard, one R in right. The left-hand side is known as the port, P-O-R-T, and L-E-F-T have the same amount of letters. You can also remember when you drink port, there's rarely any left. Off the right-hand side or starboard side, you'll see one of our light rail transit systems transitioning across the Pittsburgh T-Bridge now. Now, its formal name is the Monongahela Bridge, but we like to call it the T-Bridge. The T is our light rail transit system that gets you just about anywhere you need to go in the city. Uptown, downtown, east side, west side. It'll get you there in about half the time it takes you to drive. Because Pittsburgh wasn't only high-ranking in bridges, we're also high-ranking in the worst cities to drive in America. We broke the top 10, partially because of our complicated infrastructure and difficult-to-navigate roadways. Continuing along the right-hand side, you'll start to glimpse Pittsburgh's beautiful city skyline. We'll start with the brown building that looks like a miniature Empire State Building. Fun fact, most of the steel that was made for the Empire State Building was manufactured right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Following that building all the way up to the top, you'll see a miniature radio tower, but it's not putting off radio waves. It's actually blinking a bright neon green light, That is Pittsburgh's one and only lighthouse that helps both boats and aviation navigate our three-river systems. That bright neon green light isn't yearning for Daisy Buchanan across the way. It's actually blinking out the word Pittsburgh in Morse code. To the left of that, you'll see several buildings built very close together, making up one Oxford Center. Now, one Oxford Center had one thing and one thing in mind when they built those structures, and that was corner office space. Thusly, they removed the traditional 90-degree angles you see on most corners in Pittsburgh. Because of this, all of the offices have a beautiful city view or riverfront property. Well, I shouldn't say all of them. Due to a slight miscalculation in building those buildings so close together, only about half of them have that miraculous view. The other half have a view into the beautiful adjoining corner office. Continuing along our skyline, look off of our right-hand side once more. Up above the city, you'll see the newest skyscraper in our Pittsburgh city skyline. This is known as the Towers at PPG Place. You can see it by its large slanted rooftop. Now, the Towers at PPG Place is the newest skyscraper, having been opened in 2015, and also the most eco-friendly skyscraper in our skyline. Looking at that slanted rooftop, you can make up hundreds of thousands of solar panels that allow the building to run with the same energy efficiency as approximately 2 residential households each and every month.
No way.
Now, here in Pittsburgh, we've made quite a name for ourselves as the Hollywood of the East. We've had hundreds of TV shows, movies, and commercials filmed here each and every year. In fact, we just wrapped the most recent season of Mayor of Kingstown, starring the Avengers' own Jeremy Renner. We've also seen the likes of Seth Rogen, Tom Cruise, and Tom Hanks filming movies here in Pittsburgh. If you are a horror fan, the words "They're coming to get you, Barbara" may send shivers up your spine. I'm talking about The Night of the Living Dead, which was filmed in Pittsburgh and surrounding areas, including the famous Evans City Cemetery as well. When Mr. George Romero filmed the movie in Pittsburgh and surrounding areas, he used Floor 7 in our skyline as his production headquarters, going as far as to film many of the farmhouse scenes in the basement of Building 247. Now, speaking of motion pictures, up above the city you'll see a large glass castle-like structure modeled after Britain's Parliament. You may recognize this from the hit Matthew Broderick movie, Inspector Gadget. Well, if you missed that one, don't blame yourself. Certain critics would actually recommend you skip it. But you may know it from The Dark Knight Rises, the Batman movie that Christopher Nolan filmed right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, turning our skyline into Goth faced off against villains such as Bane. In reality, this building is known as PPG Place, or Pittsburgh Plate Glass Plate. They would have been a glass manufacturing company here in the city, and thusly they covered their entire building in their bright, shimmering products. Nowadays, PPG hosts a different building here in the city. PPG Paints Arena, the home to our beloved Pittsburgh Penguins. Continuing off both the left and right hand sides of the boat, you'll see a bridge pier coming into view. This is all that remains of the Wabash Railroad Bridge. Now, as I mentioned before, the railway was an important part of Pittsburgh's history, and this would have allowed trains to come from the center of the city all the way across the Monongahela River and through the side of Mount Washington. After 3 generations of upkeep, it unfortunately fell into disrepair.
What's he talking about?
Disassembled, leaving only
What's he talking about? Oh, that.
Now, not only are these a reminder of Pittsburgh's industrious past, we've had various plans for
I think he's talking about that.
Some people have proposed pedestrian ways or vehicle ways. One individual wanted to turn them into art installations. Even another individual put them up for sale on Craigslist.
Same.
Now, I don't think they sold, so if you have any interest in purchasing the Wabash Railroad Bridge terminals, come see me after the tour. I'll get you all set up. Just make the check out to Josh, the narrator. Continuing along, Pittsburgh is known for many things, amongst them our love for sports. Off of our left-hand side now, you'll see the first stadium of our tour, known as Highmark Stadium. Highmark Stadium is the newest stadium here in the Pittsburgh City region. It is home to our very own professional women's soccer team, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who actually play there on the 4th of July if you're looking for something to do. This also acts as one of the many performance venues here where you can see live music direct and on the river. Now, ahead of us is perhaps the scariest view we're going to see on today's tour. I'm talking about the terrifying, the awe-inspiring Fort Pitt Bridge. Now, it may not look like much from the water, but this is one of the most notoriously difficult to navigate bridges in the city, with multiple entrances and exits and very little time to figure out which way you need to go. It's incredibly difficult.
I love that for them.
Cementing us as one of the most difficult to navigate cities. That's on the bottom. However, on the top, you get a beautiful view of the city coming out of the Fort Pitt Tunnel that we call Pittsburgh's front door. It's so beautiful, in fact, that it was heavily featured in the movie and book Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was also filmed at my very own high school. It starred Logan Lerman, Ezra Miller, Paul Rudd, and Ms. Emma Watson. Continuing off our right-hand side, follow the Fort Pitt Bridge all the way down into Point State Park. You'll see exactly where Fort Pitt itself used to stand. Look for the large American flag, follow it all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see the Fort Pitt Blockhouse.
I don't see that. I don't see it.
The blockhouse itself is so old that it predates the United States by several years.
I don't see it.
Directly to the right of that, you'll see a large building with a green roof, which is a reproduction of one of the original spires of Fort Pitt itself. Now, originally, there would have been 4 additional, making 5 total, and they would have been conjoined with thick walls designed to withstand cannon fodder.
Yes,
as I
sir.
mentioned before, this is a reproduction of one of those spires, and inside is a museum where you can learn all about the many battles that took place here in Point State Park. Continuing along Point State Park, off of our right, normally you would see the fountain at the point. However, it is noticeably absent today and will be for the remainder of 2025.
Why?
Pittsburgh has been given the distinct privilege of hosting the NFL Draft League here. And in preparation for that, we are completely revitalizing the fountain at the point, going as far to remove all of the electrical and plumbing inside, bringing it back better than ever. Now, normally that fountain can go up to 250 feet in the air, and I do say go up to because it's adjustable. Originally, it would have been at that height 24/7, but Pittsburgh holds a place in another notorious top 10. We have been voted one of the top 10 rainiest cities in America, and with that comes some rather unpredictable weather patterns. As the wind came across Point State Park, it was known to pick up much of the water at the fountain at the point, taking it all the way to the back and depositing it ever so lovingly on the Wyndham Hotel and her guests. Now, obviously, they didn't like that very much, so we installed a large computer system in the blockhouse off to your right. This measures the wind speed as it comes across the Pittsburgh region, allowing us to raise or lower that fountain in accordance. That way we can keep most of the spray in the circular basin down at the bottom. Now, we're about to hit a really interesting point in our waterways, and I'm going to need all your help to do it. We're going to do a quick magic trick. So I need everybody to close their eyes. And on the count of 3, we're going to say the magic word, Palomalu. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Palomalu.
Okay, I feel like it lacked enthusiasm. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3.
Palomalu.
Okay, I don't know if that was much better, but it did work. We've been transported through time and space itself to a place that is 3 locations at once. Ooh. Okay, it may not look like much, but we are currently on 3 bodies of water at the same time. One of the only places in the United States that you can do so. You see, we're exiting out of the Monongahela into the Allegheny, all the while skimming through the Ohio, which continues off to our right. Now, we're not only in 3 places at once, we're also at the start of something, one of the largest bodies of water in the world. Looking off our right-hand side, look close at Point State Park, where you'll see a large circular marker at the point of Point State Park. This marks mile marker 0.0 of the Ohio River, which starts right here as the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers merge into one. Now, all of these rivers are very different, the Monongahela especially. It runs backwards in accordance to most of the rivers here in America. It smells like fish. It also features a mud bottom, leading to a perpetually dark, murky color. It's not polluted, it's just that as boats like ourselves come across, it turns up that mud, turning it much darker than the other 2, which have sand and gravel bottoms. Because of this, on a bright and clear day, you can actually look from an aerial view and see where the rivers divide. Now, looking at the rivers, you'd think they're pretty deep, 30, 40, 50 feet deep. Well, in reality, they're much shallower, only 16 and a half feet deep. Now, that is year-round, and it's much deeper than Mother Nature intended them to be. You see, without human intervention, our rivers run about 3.5 feet deep, 6 months out of the year. As Pittsburgh is a very important port, it led to issues with boats such as ourselves being able to navigate the waters. And it wasn't uncommon to see large boats stuck in the mud for up to 6 months out of the year. Thankfully, the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers intervened, allowing us to build our complex lock and dam systems, raising up our rivers to that 16.5 feet deep, and allowing today's trip to be possible. Now, looking at these rivers, even though they are only 16.5 feet deep, they're certainly deep enough to lose something. You're thinking something small, an earring, a ring. Well, think something larger. How about a boat or a car? Well, how about even larger than that? What about an airplane? It's true, during the time of World War II, we had a B-24 bomber come flying over this great city of ours, and unfortunately something went terribly wrong. If you were to cut back through Point State Park onto the Monongahela River, you'd have an approximate location where the pilot made an emergency splashdown landing in one of the only clear spaces, the Monongahela River. Now, his quick thinking paid off, and he was able to save all but 2 of his crew members on board. The U.S. Coast Guard was there very quickly to get people to safety, and that's when things started to get strange. You see, quick thinking, they hooked their anchor onto the plane in an attempt to keep it in place in the notorious quick current, but it was swept underwater where it sank deep into the mud. When they returned after their emergency trip to shore to get those people attention that they needed, they found that the plane had vanished. Now, of course, we've looked using everything from boats to divers and even sonar systems. However, the notorious plane has never been found, making it one of Pittsburgh's greatest mysteries. Now, speaking of Pittsburgh mysteries, we have 4 seasons, just like everybody else. You may know the normal ones: spring, summer, fall, and winter. Well, here in the city, we have spring, winter, fall, and construction season. You'll know it's construction season going up and down our highways and seeing our beautiful state colors of PennDOT orange. Now, the bridge out ahead of us is no stranger to Pittsburgh construction woes. Nowadays, it's known as the Fort Duquesne Bridge, and you haven't had too many IC lights. It is exactly the same as the Fort Pitt Bridge in all ways, except for its size. The Fort Duquesne Bridge is much smaller, in reference to the fact that Fort Duquesne, which once occupied the Point State Park property where Fort Pitt was much smaller than Fort Pitt itself. Now, I said nowadays it's known as the Fort Duquesne Bridge because for quite some time it was known as the bridge to nowhere, as it suddenly and abruptly ended directly in the center of where our boat is currently intersecting it. Now, due to construction delays, we put out signs and bridges and people saying, "Stop, bridge out ahead, don't go." But that didn't stop one local university student from taking his family SUV off the end of the unfinished bridge to nowhere, flipping it over once and landing it in the Allegheny River, on which we currently sail. Now, not to worry, he was okay. After the accident, that is. We couldn't reach him for comment after he went home and told his parents what he had done to the family vehicle. Now, this was such a cultural moment in Pittsburgh history that many radio stations reported on it, hosting a contest who can drive their car the furthest off the edge of the bridge to nowhere. Miraculously, that original college student won because there were no other entries. Continuing off our right-hand side once more, look up above our city for a large building that looks like a hypodermic needle. It's very fitting that it bears the word Highmark, one of the largest medical providers here in the city. Now, the Highmark building is not quite as tall as it was originally intended to be. You see, the designer of the structure brought it before the Board of Engineers, and they said, no, it's too tall. It's going to mess with the sight lines of our city skyline. So in order to mark where he thought the top of the Highmark building belonged, he put that large pole on top. Now, as I mentioned before, Pittsburgh has rather notoriously unpredictable winds, so he ingeniously designed a system that allows it to sway up to 6 feet in either direction.
Bro.
Now, perhaps because he was upset with the engineers at the time, he failed to mention that to anybody else on the project, which resulted in them opening the Highmark building and evacuating 3 city blocks surrounding it for fear that the needle would fall on the people below. Off of our left-hand side now and through the trees, you'll see PNC Park, home to our world-famous Pittsburgh Pirates.
But
yeah, that's kind of the reaction we've been getting lately. The Pittsburgh Pirates are a rather notoriously well-discussed team, even though they did go on to win several of their games lately. What we can agree on is that PNC Park is a great place to see a baseball game. You don't have to take my word for that.
Boo
ESPN,
Pirates!
as well as several other sporting networks, voted PNC as one of the best to come see a
Boo
game.
Pirates!
Perhaps it's the open concept of the city behind it, or the ideas are within 100 feet of the home plate, making all of the seats good ones. If you don't believe those two, take for instance the fact that PNC is one of 2 major league stadiums in which you can hit a fly ball out of the park and into a moving body of water. Regardless of which reason you choose, I highly recommend stopping down to PNC Park and seeing a game this summer.
Been there, done that.
You'll see our 3 sister bridges. Our 3 sister bridges are unique in the sense that they are identical, having been built from very similar blueprints. They're all named after a famous Pittsburgh contributionist. The first of which is very fitting to be close to PNC Park, known as the Roberto Clemente Bridge. The Roberto Clemente Bridge is shut down on game days, transforming it into a pedestrian bridge, allowing people safe passage to and from the game. Now, of course, it's named after the famous Pittsburgh Pirate, Mr. Roberto Clemente. Not only was he known for his home run records, but his humanitarian efforts in hurricane relief foundations.
I love you, Roberto.
Continuing under the Roberto Clemente Bridge, look off to your right-hand side once more.
Andy Warhol.
Where you'll see the tallest structure in our skyline. Now, it has the letters UPMC on the side, but it's known as the U.S. Steel Building, or the Rusty Nail by some locals, and it is covered in rust. You see, the U.S. Steel Tower is constructed using Core 10 U.S. steel. New at the time of design, it rusts on the outside, protecting a hard coat, forming a hard protective coating for the important interior structure. Now, Pittsburgh's unpredictable weather struck again during construction, and that coating is meant to form over months, if not years. Because of a bad bout of acid rain, it rust virtually overnight, turning not only the building that color, but several city sidewalks surrounding it, including the individuals walking on them. Got so bad that we had to put up tents, allowing people safe passage in and out of the U.S. Steel Building. We're about to go under our second sister bridge, known as the Andy Warhol Bridge. It's, of course, named after the famed pop artist, Andrew Warhol. At least that's what he would have been known as when he grew up here. Now, Andy wasn't the biggest Pittsburgh fan, and famously he was asked where he grew up. His response was, "I come from nowhere." Now, we didn't hold that against him, and if you were to continue the bridge over to your left-hand side through the Alcoa building, you'd run into the Andy Warhol Museum.
Never heard of it.
The Warhol Museum is the largest collection of a singular artist's work anywhere in the world. They also host rotating exhibit space, so you'll see something new every time you go. Inside, you'll see many collections of his famous pop artwork, including his Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup can, as well as some more other blue works of a family tour. Now, we're about to go under the third of our sister bridges, known as the Rachel E. Carson Bridge. Rachel Carson was perhaps a scientist and ecologist. Best known for her work in the book Silent Spring. Silent Spring outlined the harmful effects of DDT, a pesticide farmers were using on their crops to help reduce mosquito populations. Unfortunately, it also had adverse effects on local fish and aviation life. Thankfully, with the publication of her research, we were able to pull that drug from market, giving us cleaner water and airways that we know and love today. Up above the city, in front of the U.S. Steel Building, you'll see the Gulf Tower. It has that large pyramid structure on top. As the lights go down in the city, keep an eye on the Gulf Tower, where you'll see its beautiful colors. Originally, neon lights would have shown up there in the colors of orange and blue.
I think he's talking about that.
The LED update allows us to transform each layer into a different color, giving us the opportunity to give a complex and detailed weather report for the following day. Continuing along our right-hand side now, you'll see the longest building of our tour, known as the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. Now, the David L. Lawrence Convention Center is the second convention center of the same name to have sat on this property, being over 3 times larger than the first. So much so that we've built a roadway through it to help alleviate some of that famous Pittsburgh traffic. Now, as the convention center's name may suggest, it hosts various conventions throughout the year, and this week we welcome Anthrocon, when the furries come to Pittsburgh. Each year, these individuals spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Pittsburgh support and tax revenue, making them a very welcome sight. Out ahead of us, as we go under the final railway bridge of our tour, take a look at the bridge piers themselves. You'll notice they are 2 distinct different colors. You'll remember our conversation at the point where we had to raise our rivers from 3.5 feet deep to 16.5 feet deep. And so did we have to raise many of our bridges, this one included. Now, as the railway was an important part of Pittsburgh and United States commerce at the time, we didn't want to shut the bridge down for quite some time, so we didn't. We brought in a construction crew that built up one end of the bridge piers, doing the same on the other again and again until it sits where it does today. All the while, up to 4 trains would have been roaring just feet above the heads of the construction workers working on the piers. Looking through the trees on our right-hand side, you can see a large ketchup bottle adorning the outside of our Heinz History Museum. The Heinz History Museum has hundreds of thousands of artifacts from Pittsburgh's industrious and pop culture history for your enjoyment and learning. Now, as we enter into our second turn of the tour, I'm going to take a quick break and allow you to get up and stretch your legs. On a warm summer evening, hydration is super important, so I highly recommend checking out the bar on our second floor. Here you'll find everything from water and pop to some local brews and cocktails, as well as several snacks. Keep an eye out too for our green shirted photographers who will be around to show you the photo they took of you as you got on board today. These are a great souvenir to remember your trip here on the Clipper. As for me, I'll be hanging out here on the stern of the third deck. If you have any questions or just want to say hey, feel free to stop on back. Otherwise, I'll talk to you a little bit further down the river. Thank you.
అవి